Hey everybody, welcome back. We got a couple of things to talk about today, second of which is this little speaker right here. First of which is, guys, if you're going to send us a speaker for evaluation, please send along with that speaker all your contact information so that we can contact you and give you the information that we get when we evaluate it. This one came in a box with no contact information, and the name on the label was partially smudged. Can't really see exactly who it came from. I've gone through emails and I don't see anybody emailing me anything about this little speaker, so we're a little in the dark as to who sent this to us. And so we went ahead and set it up and did an evaluation on it. This is the little Totem Mite, and kind of a cute little speaker, not very big. The grill is a little MDF grill, and they did not radius the inside edges on it much at all. And tweeter looks like a pretty decent tweeter. Little woofer, maybe it's a polycone woofer, or it might be a paper cone woofer. Really didn't dig into it too deeply. It was in a box with no insulation. And we see no insulation because I took the crossover out of it back here and can see nothing inside of there, which explains a few of the things that we saw in the measurements. Parts-wise, wow, what a mixed bag this one is. I don't know what to think about the folks over there at Totem. It's like, okay, you put a pretty good capacitor on this tweeter. You've got a really good coil on this woofer. And then everything else that was done kind of nullified those advantages. So let's take a look at it here. We've got a Lutz style air core inductor from Solon. Then we've got a good polypropylene capacitor from Clarity Cap. In fact, Clarity Cap printed the name and the logo and stuff on the cap for Totem, and it looks nice. And those are pretty decent poly caps. For budget level caps, those are really good. Now, then there's all these steel parts in the signal path. Binding post with the little plate on the back, I hate those things. What's funny is on the other side of the binding post is we see steel nuts on it. And what's really funny to me is there's steel nuts that are gold coated. Can't make this stuff up. This is so funny to me. Gold coated steel. What a waste of gold. Like, why would you put a steel nut on the back of that binding post? That makes no sense at all. Just put a little brass one on there or something, because that's probably what the binding post is anyway. Just put a brass nut on it. No. Steel, but to make the steel look cool, gold-coated steel. Oh my goodness. Then the resistor that's in line with the capacitor, it has steel leads. And then there's these connectors that everything is connected through, and those have steel leads on them as well. And steel screws that are holding. It's like, man, like you went so far as to use some decent quality parts and then you nullified it with a bunch of ferrous material. Makes no sense at all. So, I also noticed looking at this, it's a first order filter, and there's not that many drivers that can be used with first order slopes, at least not in a two-way design. It's easy to use first order filters when you're talking low crossover points, if you like 150, 250 hertz, where they're rolling off into each other, but the wavelengths are so long that out of band, they're not out of phase with each other. When you do a two-way design, it's very easy when you're doing a first order filter for the drivers to cascade pretty far into each other's band pass, and then as they're covering those same frequency ranges, even though they're down in output, the time arrival at those wavelengths can be delayed by 180 degrees. It can be completely out of phase, especially when you move up or down. You're changing the time arrival of the two drivers, and you're causing these massive suckouts in response. So I'm looking at that first order filter, I'm thinking, yeah, good luck with that, man. We'll see what happens. So let's look at the on-axis measured frequency response. And as you can see, it's pretty rough. Yeah, I can't say much good about that. And let's go straight to the spectral decay and look at the spectral decay in comparison to that on-axis response. You can see several things going on here. You can see some ringing and some breakup at the upper range of the woofer's range. And you can see a pretty big hump there at 1 kHz where there's some stored energy there. And as you look just below that in that spectral decay, you can see a secondary hump coming up, probably due to the fact that there is no insulation in the box. Now, I don't know that Totem sent this stuff out with 0 insulation in the box. The customer might have pulled it out, looked at it, threw it away, put it back together, and sent it to us, thinking, we'll fix it. I don't know. But the way it showed up to us, no insulation. Now, definitely some issues going on there in the spectral decay. Let's go back to the on-axis frequency response and look at it with and without this grill. And you can see that once the grill is added, it does alter the response a little bit because of the diffraction, but it isn't bad. Now, let's look at the individual driver responses, because they put 2 sets of binding posts on the back of that thing, or 2 pairs, so I could kick the little plate off and measure them independently. So let's have a look at that. Looks pretty rough. If you look at the curves and you look at the way the woofer curve is, you see a big hump there at 1K, and then it drops pretty drastically, and then there's a bunch of stuff going on there where there's some breakup. So I don't know that this woofer could be used beyond 1500 hertz or so because of the breakup at the upper ranges, and because there's a knee at 1K and then it drops right after that. I could probably pull some of that knee out of it and create a little bit of a roll off there, but pushing it up higher, it's going to be difficult because it's hard to lift a hole. It's easy to bring down a peak. I can notch it out and do some things to bring power out of it in that range, but filling a hole is pretty difficult. Also, looking at that tweeter's response, that's typical slope of a first order on a tweeter. It's got a knee down there at the lowest range of its response. This isn't the kind of drivers you can use a first order filter with. Come on, guys. That you want to look at the frequency response of the 2 drivers, and you want to see them do this. You want to see them roll smoothly into each other and some flatly. This does not do that. These drivers absolutely are not candidates for a first order filter. And I know some companies go with first order filters because it's cheap. But in this case, though, I don't think they went with it because it's cheap, because they put good quality capacitor and a good quality inductor in there. So it wasn't done for cheap. It was just not engineered very well. Let's look at the horizontal off axis, and you can see that it drops off pretty evenly. Nothing bad going on as you move left to right. But now let's look at the vertical off axis, and it illustrates what I was talking about earlier. Look at the red line that's measured on tweeter axis at 1 meter. And then the orange line is moving up 4 inches. So it's not a big movement there. And as you can see, it up there at the higher frequency range, they're starting to move into an out of phase situation. And in the lower range there, around 1500 hertz to 2000 hertz, you can see the drivers are starting to become more in phase. And then look at the yellow line. That's moved up 8 inches. And as you can see, there's a pretty good little hole formed up there in the upper range, and again it's coming up in the range there where they're overlapped onto each other. And then lastly, look at the green line on the chart there, and you can see there's quite a bit of difference there. That's moved up another 4 inches, so it's moved up 12 inches on tweeter axis at 1 meter. Just that little bit of time delay difference made a huge difference in the frequency response. It made it out of phase in one range and then in phase in another range, and caused a lift where that's really telling me they really weren't in phase very well at any particular point in the whole on tweeter axis. So kind of a mess. Again, not a good candidate for first order crossover. The impedance response. Let's take a look at that. It's a little ported box. There's a tiny little port in the back of this thing, which also concerns me a little bit. That might start causing a little huffing and chuffing because it's so small in diameter. But it's tuned fairly low also. It dips to 4.4 ohms at the tuning and 4.2 ohms around 240 hertz. And also, because they just used an inline resistor in line with that capacitor to the tweeter, just a single resistor, there's an impedance mismatch in the impedance curve there. You can see down at the woofer level we're down to 4 ohms, and at the tweeter level we're way up there around 11 or 12 ohms. So that's a mismatch of impedance. The amplifier is going to see that kind of differently. All in all, not a very well designed speaker. I can't really sugarcoat that anymore. Or no way to sugarcoat it. Whoever sent this speaker in, if you see this video, please contact us and let us know what you want us to do with it. We're not going to do anything with it yet, other than we've just evaluated it, and we do that service for free. I've told you guys many times, you send something in, we'll evaluate it, measure and test it, send you the measured responses, and we do that as a free service. Sometimes on a big speaker, we're going to charge a little something to handle it. We've got to unbox it and put it back in the box and things like that. And that takes some time, and I've got employees that are having to do that and be careful with it and unboxing. There may be a small fee for that if it's a big speaker. For something like this, nothing. We just unbox it, set it up, take the measurements, see what it's doing. We'll sometimes pop a driver out or pop the binding posts off so we can see what's inside, so we can better be equipped to tell you what's there and where we can go with it from there. So that's it for this video. Hopefully the customer will respond, and maybe we'll do an upgrade on this and turn this little box into something that would be pleasant to listen to. We'll see. Maybe in a new episode. See you guys in the next one.